The moment my father discovered the text messages from Vincent on my phone, he gave me an ultimatum that shattered everything I thought I knew about family. I never expected that being forced to break up with the man I loved would be the very thing that unlocked a stronger, more authentic version of myself. It was a rainy afternoon in Seattle, Washington, where I had built what I thought was a perfect life. At 28, I was climbing the corporate ladder at my family's marketing firm, the one my father had poured his life into since before I was born. The office overlooked Puget Sound, with floor-to-ceiling windows that usually made me feel on top of the world. Vincent was my secret, my sanctuary. We had met 2 years earlier at a charity event for LGBTQ youth, where his passion for teaching history at the local high school had immediately drawn me in. He was 31, with kind hazel eyes, a quiet laugh that could cut through the grayest Pacific Northwest day, and a way of listening that made every problem feel solvable. Our relationship had been careful, hidden from my conservative family who still believed I was the straight son they raised to take over the business one day. We stole moments in quiet coffee shops on the outskirts of the city, weekend hikes in the Cascades where no one knew us, and late-night phone calls that felt like lifelines. That day, everything changed when Dad picked up my phone to check a work email while I was in a meeting. I walked back in his office and saw his face turn red as he scrolled. "Luis, what the hell is this?" he roared, thrusting the phone at me. The messages were innocent enough on the surface. "Can't wait to see you tonight, love. Miss your smile already," but to him, they were a betrayal. My mother stood in the doorway of the conference room, her hands covering her mouth in shock, her perfectly styled hair suddenly out of place. I tried to explain, to tell them that Vincent made me happy, that being gay wasn't a choice or a phase or something I could just switch off, but the words fell on deaf ears. "If you don't end this right now, you're out of the will, out of the company, out of this family," my father said coldly, his voice echoing off the glass walls. "Think about your mother, about the business partners who would pull out if they knew. We have a reputation to uphold in this city. Clients don't want to work with people like that." The pressure was suffocating, like a weight pressing on my chest until I could barely breathe. I loved my family, even if their views were rooted in another era. Vincent and I had talked about coming out eventually, maybe after I proved myself at the firm, but the timing never felt right. Now it was forced upon me in the worst way possible. That evening, I met Vincent at our favorite cafe near the waterfront. The rain pounded against the windows as I sat across from him, my hands shaking around a cup of black coffee that had gone cold. The barista knew us by name and always gave us the corner table, but tonight the warmth of the place felt distant. "I have to do this," I said, my voice breaking for the first time since the confrontation. "My family, they found out. It's either us or everything I've known, my job, my home, the legacy they built for me." Vincent's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded slowly, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand one last time. "I love you, Luis. If letting go is what you need to survive right now, then I won't stand in your way. But know this, you're worth more than their approval." We hugged outside under the awning, the kind of embrace that felt like goodbye forever, rain soaking our jackets as cars splashed by on the wet street. I watched him walk away toward his apartment, shoulders slumped, and something inside me cracked open. The weeks that followed were a blur of numbness and forced normalcy. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office to avoid the empty condo I now hated. Friends noticed the change. My best buddy from college, Marcus, kept texting to check in, but I brushed it off as stress from a big client pitch. Internally, the conflict raged like a storm I couldn't outrun. Was I a coward for giving in? Or was I protecting the people I owe my entire life to? The identity crisis hit hardest at night, when I'd stare at the ceiling wondering who I was without Vincent's steady presence. Memories flooded in. The way he'd quote historical figures during our hikes, making the mountains feel alive with stories. The quiet mornings in his apartment where we'd share toast and coffee before the world woke up. But deep down, a small spark of determination began to flicker amid the pain. Maybe this forced separation was teaching me something I needed to learn about standing on my own. I started journaling late at night, scribbling thoughts I never dared voice aloud, try to piece together what my life could look like if I stopped living for everyone else. The firm's annual gala was coming up, and my father expected me to attend with a suitable date, some daughter of a business associate. I agreed outwardly, but inside the resentment grew. Seattle's lights reflected off the sound as I drove home each night, wondering how long I could keep pretending. I showed up to the gala in a tailored black suit, smiling for the cameras as my father introduced me to potential clients. The ballroom at the downtown hotel glittered with chandeliers and crystal glasses, but the laughter around me felt hollow. My date, a polite woman named Claire who worked in finance, chatted easily about market trends while I nodded along, my mind drifting back to Vincent. I hadn't heard from him since that rainy night, and the silence was its own kind of torture. After the speeches, I slipped out to the balcony overlooking the city lights. The cool air hit my face, and for the first time, I let myself feel the full weight of what I had lost. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "You okay, man? You look like you're carrying the world." I typed back a quick "fine, just tired," but the lie tasted bitter. The next morning, I woke to my mother's call. "Your father and I are proud of you for making the right choice," she said softly, her voice laced with relief. "This will pass, Luis. You'll meet someone right for our family." I hung up and stared at the photo of Vincent I still kept hidden in my drawer, a candid shot from our last hike, his smile wide against the backdrop of evergreens. The guilt mixed with anger until I couldn't sit still. I decided to take a personal day, something I never did, and drove out to the Olympic Peninsula. The winding roads and misty forests gave me space to think. I stopped at a small overlook and sat on a fallen log, letting the damp earth ground me. For hours I replayed every conversation with my parents, every subtle hint they had dropped over the years about settling down the right way. The societal pressure wasn't just theirs, it was everywhere in our circle. The church my family still attended, the country club events, the business lunches where jokes about alternative lifestyles flew freely. I had internalized it all, convincing myself that hiding was protection. Now, without Vincent, the mask felt suffocating. Back at the office on Monday, a new project landed on my desk, an expansion campaign for a tech startup in San Francisco. My father saw it as an opportunity for me to prove myself further. "This could be your chance to show the board you're ready for more responsibility," he said, clapping my shoulder like nothing had happened. I nodded, but inside a plan began to form. Maybe distance was what I needed. I threw myself into research, staying late to analyze market data and draft proposals. The work distracted me, but at night, the emptiness returned. I started running along the waterfront path at dawn, pushing my body until my lungs burned, hoping the physical exhaustion would quiet the emotional storm. Marcus finally cornered me one evening over beers at our usual sports bar. "Talk to me, Luis. You've been a ghost since that gala. Is it work or something else?" I hesitated, then told him everything: the confrontation, the breakup, the ultimatum. He listened without judgment, his eyes widening. "Man, that's heavy. You don't have to carry this alone, right? There are communities here that would support you." His words planted a seed. For the first time, I considered reaching out to a local LGBTQ support group I had seen advertised online. The weeks turned into months. I completed the San Francisco pitch and won the account, earning rare praise from my father. But the victory felt empty. Vincent's absence was a constant ache. I avoided our old spots, deleted our shared playlist, yet every song on the radio seemed to remind me of him. One rainy Sunday, I drove past his school and saw him through the chain-link fence, coaching the debate team on the field. He looked focused, strong, but there was a sadness in his posture that mirrored my own. I didn't stop. Instead, I kept driving, tears blurring the road. That night, I finally opened the support group's website and signed up for a virtual meeting. The facilitator's voice was calm as strangers shared stories of family rejection and self-discovery. For the first time since the breakup, I didn't feel completely alone. My father announced a family vacation to the East Coast to reconnect. I dreaded it, but went along, hoping the change of scenery would help. In Boston, we visited historical sites, and I found myself thinking of Vincent's history lessons. The tension with my parents simmered beneath polite conversations. On the last night, over dinner at a waterfront restaurant, my father raised a toast to Luis, who chose family above all. I forced a smile, but inside the words stung like salt in a wound. Back in Seattle, the resentment hardened into resolve. I started updating my resume in secret, looking at positions in other cities. The idea of leaving everything behind terrified me, yet staying felt like slow suffocation. Little by little, the spark of determination grew into a quiet fire. I was beginning to see that letting go of Vincent might have been the first step toward letting go of the version of myself that lived for approval. The support group meetings became my anchor. Every Tuesday night, I logged in from my condo, camera off at first, just listening. Stories poured out, men my age who had been disowned, others who had rebuilt careers after coming out. One guy named Tyler shared how he moved across the country after his parents cut him off, only to find success and peace in a new city. His words stuck with me. I began speaking up in the third session, my voice shaky as I described the ultimatum and the breakup. The group's encouragement wrapped around me like a safety net I didn't know I needed. "You're already stronger than you think," the facilitator said. Those simple words echoed during my runs and late nights at the office. Work became both refuge and cage. The San Francisco campaign launched successfully, bringing in new revenue that impressed the board. My father started mentioning me in meetings as the future of the firm, but the praise now felt like chains. I overheard him on a call one afternoon, assuring a conservative client that family values were still core to our brand. The hypocrisy burned. That evening, I met Marcus for dinner at a quiet Thai place downtown. "I'm thinking of leaving," I confessed over pad CEW. "Not just the company, the city." He didn't flinch. "Do it, man. You got talent. New York or LA could use someone like you." The conversation stretched late, and for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a life without the family shadow. The misunderstanding that nearly broke me came 2 months later. I saw a social media post from a mutual friend, Vincent at a beach bonfire with his arm around another guy, both smiling. The caption read, "New beginnings." My stomach dropped. I stared at the photo for hours, replaying every moment we shared. Had he moved on so quickly? The pain felt fresh, sharper than the initial breakup. I canceled my next run, skipped the support meeting, and sat in my dark living room questioning everything. Was I the only one still hurting? The next day at work, I snapped at a junior colleague over a minor error, then apologized profusely in the break room. The emotional whiplash left me exhausted. I called in sick the following day and drove to the mountains, hiking alone until my legs shook. At the summit, I sat on a rock and cried for the first time since that rainy cafe night. The tears weren't just for Vincent. They were for the years I had spent hiding, for the version of Louise who thought love had to be earned through sacrifice. Slowly, the anger shifted into clarity. I realized the photo might not tell the whole story, but more importantly, my worth couldn't depend on Vincent's choices or my family's approval. I returned to the support group and shared the spiral. The others nodded with understanding. "Healing isn't linear," one man said. That night, I drafted a resignation letter, then deleted it. Not yet. I needed a plan. I started applying to marketing director positions in New York, updating my portfolio with fresh ideas that reflected my own voice instead of the firm's safe, traditional style. The applications felt like tiny rebellions. My mother sensed the shift. During a Sunday brunch at their house, she pulled me aside in the kitchen. "You seem distant, honey. Is everything okay?" I wanted to scream the truth, but instead I said I was just busy. The conversation left me drained. That afternoon, I visited a small art gallery in Capitol Hill, a neighborhood I had avoided because it reminded me of Vincent. A painting of 2 men walking side by side through a stormy city caught my eye. The artist's note described it as strength found in separation. I bought on impulse and hung it in my condo. It became a daily reminder. The betrayal came from within the family. My cousin leaked news of my situation to a business associate during a golf outing. Rumors spread quietly through our circle. My father called me into his office, face tight with disappointment. Fix this before it costs us accounts. The ultimatum echoed again. Instead of crumbling, I felt a new steel in my spine. I left the office early and booked a flight to New York for an interview I'd been offered. The decision was made in that moment. Seattle had been my cage. It was time to fly. Packing boxes that weekend, I found an old note Vincent had written me on our first anniversary. You are enough exactly as you are. I folded it carefully and placed it in my wallet. The move wasn't running away. It was running toward the man I was becoming. New York hit me like a freight train, loud, fast, and alive in ways Seattle never was. I landed the marketing director role at a mid-sized tech firm in Manhattan after a grueling interview process that tested every skill I had. The salary was better, the team younger and more diverse, and no one knew my family's name. My first apartment was a tiny studio in Brooklyn with a view of the bridge, but it felt like freedom. I unpacked the painting from Capitol Hill and set it above the couch. The support group back home had connected me with a New York chapter, and I attended my first in-person meeting in a community center near Union Square. The energy was electric, stories of reinvention, of men who had rebuilt after worse. I shared my move, and the group applauded like I had won a marathon. Work consumed my days in the best way. I led campaigns that felt creative and bold, pitching ideas that reflected real diversity instead of polished facades. Colleagues became friends quickly. Sarah from design invited me to rooftop parties where the skyline glittered and conversations flowed freely about everything from politics to personal lives. For the first time, I didn't flinch when someone mentioned their partner without assuming gender. The internal crisis that had haunted me in Seattle began to quiet. I still thought of Vincent, especially on quiet subway rides, but the ache had softened into a scar that reminded me of growth. A misunderstanding nearly derailed everything 6 months in. I received a forwarded email from an old Seattle contact. Vincent had taken a job teaching at a private school in Brooklyn. The city suddenly felt smaller. I panicked, imagining running into him on the street. For weeks, I avoided certain neighborhoods, heart racing every time I saw someone with his build. Then one rainy evening, I spotted him at a bookstore reading in the history section. He looked up, and our eyes locked. The world narrowed to that aisle. "Luis," he said softly, closing the book. We stepped outside under the awning. Conversation was awkward at first. How's work? How's the city? But beneath it lay the old connection. He explained the beach photo. The guy was his cousin visiting from out of town. Relief washed over me, followed by fresh pain. We parted with a hug that lingered too long, promising to grab coffee sometime. That night, I couldn't sleep. The encounter stirred everything I thought I had buried. I called Marcus, now my long-distance sounding board, and talked it through until dawn. "Maybe it's time to see if there's still something there," he suggested. But I wasn't ready. The next weeks were a test of willpower. I focused on a major campaign launch, working 18-hour days. The success brought a promotion and my first feature in an industry magazine. My father saw the article and left a voicemail. "Proud of you, son. Come home soon." The words no longer pulled at me the way they once did. I deleted the message. Friendships deepened. I joined a recreational soccer league in Central Park with guys from the support group. The physical activity and banter healed parts of me I didn't know were broken. One teammate, Jamal, became a close confidant. Over post-game beers, he shared his own story of family rejection and how he had built a chosen family in the city. His perspective helped me see my journey not as loss, but as necessary evolution. I started volunteering at an LGBTQ youth center on weekends, mentoring teens who reminded me of my younger self, scared, hiding, full of potential. The work gave me purpose beyond the paycheck. The crisis peaked when my mother flew out unannounced for a visit. She arrived at my door with suitcases and expectations. Over dinner, she pressed me about dating, about returning to Seattle, about fixing my life. The conversation turned heated when I finally told her I was done pretending. "This is who I am, Mom. I'm gay, and I'm happy here." Tears streamed down her face, but she stayed the weekend, listening more than talking for the first time. Her departure left me drained yet lighter. I realized I had sacrificed enough. The betrayal and misunderstandings had forged me into someone who no longer needed their validation. The promotion came with a corner office overlooking the Hudson. I stood at the window one crisp autumn morning, coffee in hand, watching ferries cut through the water, and felt a profound shift. The man staring back in a glass reflection was different, shoulders squared, eyes clear, no longer carrying the weight of other people's expectations. Therapy sessions twice a month had become non-negotiable. My therapist, Dr. Elena, helped me unpack the years of internalized shame and the guilt of letting go. "You didn't lose yourself," she said during one session. "You found yourself." Those words became my mantra. I began setting boundaries with my family. Polite but firm calls once a month. No more ultimatums tolerated. My father tested them once, hinting at inheritance if I came to my senses. I responded calmly that my life was no longer for sale. The silence on the other end felt like victory. Vincent and I started meeting for coffee every few weeks. The conversations were careful at first, then easier. We talked about our careers, the city, the past without blame. One evening at a small Italian place in the village, he reached across the table. "I never stopped caring, Luis, but I'm proud of who you've become." The words warmed me, but I wasn't ready to reopen the door fully. My growth had taught me that love couldn't be the only foundation. I needed to stand solid on my own first. We agreed to stay friends, and the arrangement brought peace instead of pain. A work trip to Los Angeles for a conference became a turning point. The California sun and ocean air reminded me of the happy scene I once thought lost forever. During a panel on inclusive marketing, I spoke openly about my journey, sharing how personal authenticity fueled better campaigns. The applause was genuine. Backstage, a network executive offered me a dream role, creative director at a major agency on the West Coast. The offer included relocation support and complete creative freedom. I flew home and spent 3 days weighing it. New York had healed me, but Los Angeles promised expansion. I accepted. The move was smoother than expected. I found a bright apartment in Silver Lake with a view of the hills. The support network in LA was vibrant. Hikes with new friends, beach volleyball on weekends, volunteer work at a youth shelter in West Hollywood. My family's reaction was mixed. My mother sent a care package with a note. "We're trying to understand." My father stayed silent, but I no longer needed his approval. The internal conflicts that once raged now felt like distant thunder. I had sacrificed the old life, endured the misunderstandings, and emerged clearer. One weekend, I drove up the coast to Big Sur, the same rugged beauty Vincent and I had dreamed of visiting together. I hiked alone to a cliff overlook the Pacific stretching endlessly below. Sitting on the edge, wind whipping my hair, I realized the full extent of my transformation. The boy who caved to an ultimatum had become a man who chose himself. I pulled out the old note from my wallet and read it again. "You are enough exactly as you are." This time I believed it. The new role at the LA agency exploded with opportunity. My first campaign, a national push celebrating diverse families, went viral, earning industry awards and media features. Colleagues respected my vision because it came from lived experience, not corporate checklists. I mentored junior creatives, sharing lessons from my own path without sugarcoating the hard parts. Weekends filled with beach runs and sunset gatherings where laughter came easily. Vincent visited once, flying out for a long weekend. We walked along Venice Beach, the same ocean breeze we once shared in California dreams. No pressure, no expectations, just two men who had grown separately and could now appreciate each other's strength. "You look unstoppable," he said as we watched the waves. I smiled, knowing it was true. My chosen family in LA grew. Jamal flew out for a visit, and we spent days hiking Runyon Canyon and talking late into the night. He reminded me how far I'd come. The youth center work expanded. I helped organize a scholarship program for LGBTQ teens pursuing creative careers. Seeing kids light up with possibility healed old wounds in ways I never anticipated. My mother began visiting more often, attending events, and slowly asking questions that showed genuine curiosity. My father's silence softened into occasional texts about sports scores, small bridges, but bridges nonetheless. I no longer needed them to define me. One evening, a rooftop party overlooking the Hollywood Hills, surrounded by friends old and new, I raised a glass to the journey. The city lights sparkled like stars, and for the first time, I felt completely at home in my skin. The betrayals, the forced goodbye, the sleepless nights, they had all been necessary steps. I had let go of Vincent to find myself, and in doing so, discover a version of Luis that was kinder, braver, and truly free. The relationships around me, friendships, professional bonds, and the quiet possibility with Vincent felt healthier because they rested on my own solid foundation. The path hadn't been linear. There were still tough days when memories surfaced or family expectations tried to creep back in. But I had tools now, the support network, the therapy insights, the daily choice to live authentically. The man who once stood shaking in his father's office was now the one leading board meetings and inspiring others. Personal growth wasn't a destination. It was the daily decision to keep choosing myself. True or false? Letting go of the one you love is sometimes the only path to becoming your strongest self.